Hello guys, Alan here and welcome to the most authoritative Revit tutorial channel you can ever find on YouTube. And in today's video, we're going to talk about our material browser. We are still going to talk about the material browser, whatever is happening on this interface. And in our previous part, which was the part 1 of our material library series, we kind of like explained everything that was happening in here in the interface. We went on to explain about the duplication of materials. We even opened the Revit 2025 app to see what was happening with the duplicate side. All right, so we made a lot of emphasis on the assets that you find in your material browser, all right, which is the appearance asset, the physical assets, and then the thermal asset as well. So today we are going to take off from wherever we left off in part 1. I'm going to be explaining some stuff in here, and we'll kind of like finalize everything in our part 3 of this material library course series. All right, so I'm going to take off from wherever I left off. Now, if you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed or liked this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, because I'll be putting out more content like this, and you have no idea of the kind of series I'll be putting out on Revit on YouTube. All right, so you guys should make sure you subscribe to my channel, tell a friend to come. Let's watch videos on Alan Architectural's channel. So I'm going to take off from wherever I left off. Now I'm going to get back into my graphics tab. All right, so these are my assets, which is the appearance, the physical, and the thermal. So I'm going to start off today with the graphics tab. All right, so with the graphics tab, now we talked about this shading in the part 1, all right, where we talk about coloring our item in there, let's say a wall, and we want to color. Now when you select this use render appearance, I told you guys I was going to explain what this use render appearance is. Now when you select this use render appearance, what it does is that it's kind of like going to take a color that actually matches your appearance asset. All right, so it's going to take a color that defines or matches your appearance asset. So let me just bring this down a little bit, and let's head back into the graphics tab. So when I select use render appearance, you notice the color in there changes and starts to look like the appearance asset we have in here. What the brick looks like, the color of the brick is kind of like going to take emphasis of that color in there. All right, so you can decide to uncheck that, but if you are rendering your project and you want to use the same appearance that you see in here, it is very healthy for you to make sure you check the use render appearance. So it's going to use this asset appearance you see in here. All right, so I'm going to get back into the graphics tab, and then I'm going to be explaining this surface pattern and then the cut pattern for you guys. So with the surface pattern, it's kind of like a pattern. It's kind of like the pattern we are going to see on the surface of our material, just as the name implies, a surface pattern. All right, so it's going to be on the surface of your material. So now let me just close this out of the way. So now I have this wall in here, and I want to add, let's say, a surface pattern to it. So what do? I want it to look more or less like have a pattern on it. So I can just click on this right there, and then I can go back into my edit type, and then get into my edit and just click on that common red in there, and you see I've headed straight into the material browser. Now I'm going to select the use render appearance, and with my surface pattern, what you have to do is on the pattern tab, you can click on that pattern tab right there. You're going to have a pop-up menu of this sort. Now this pop-up menu is going to give you the drafting side and also the model side as well. All right, so it's going to come in 2 parts. This pop-up menu here, which is the field patterns, is going to come in 2 parts, which is the drafting side and also the model side as well. So now let's say I want the surface of my wall to have kind of like a brick-like finish. All right, so with the surface, with the drafting side, is just going to be patterns that are going to use to represent something. All right, so with the drafting aspect, which you see right here, we have the drafting, and then we have the model here. So with the drafting side, it's going to be like patterns that are used to represent something. So we kind of like have some standard patterns that we use to represent, let's say, some building materials like concrete, and some like sand, some also like a glass broken, all those patterns. All right, so it's just going to be patterns that are used to represent something. All right, so you see we have a plywood pattern in there, we have masonry concrete block pattern. So this pattern is what is used to represent that. All right, now with the model aspect, that we see in here, with the model is going to be like more of a realistic surface pattern. So the model is kind of going to give you like a more realistic pattern like surface. All right, so when we talk about a brick, is you see in here we have something looking of a pattern looking of the sort of like a brick arranged on each other in there. You can see that in there, and we have the wood board white, so you can see that in there. So I'm going to select this brick surface pattern in there under the model section. So I'm going to click on OK, and we can assign a color to it. Now you see it comes in two parts. We have the foreground and then we have the background. All right, so with the foreground is what is going to be on the surface of it. All right, so the background is what is going to be like some pattern that is going to be laid under the surface pattern, the brick pattern, which is the foreground. So the background is what is going to be laid under this foreground right here. So you can put a pattern under there to represent that, but I'm not going to do that. It's going to conflict with my brick. I'm going to put a color. I'm going to put some sort of like a color in there so that you see what I'm talking about. So I can put a solid fill pattern in there, and then I can change that and make it a little bit transparent. This is fine. So I'm going to keep it a little bit transparent in there. Now let me show you one cool thing about the color tab in there. So with the color tab, we have this red, green, blue, which are the primary colors. So one thing about Revit is that, let's say if I use this color, all right, you see this color I have in there, these figures, these numbers you see in here are codes. All right, they are codes you can actually use to find the exact same color. If maybe you happen to like the color that you use, all right, maybe you did a little bit of fidgeting around in here and you discovered a color mixture and it's kind of like nice, and you want to keep that color in, maybe you want to use that color in another material or another surface pattern. This is what you have to do. You can keep these figures in there. So with this kind of like ash color I have in there, you can see in there with the red we have 177, and then in the green we have 177, and also in the blue we have 177. Okay, so we are going to close that. I'm going to head into the shading aspect and uncheck that, click on that, and I'm going to change this to 177, and also change this to 177, and also change this to 177. Now you see we've actually found that color in there. So that's one cool tip you need to have at the back of your head. You can actually use these numbers in there, so you can write it down somewhere and then you can use it to actually produce the same color you mixed or found in there. So we are not going to use that. We are going to cancel that out of the way. So now I'm going to finish with the surface pattern. Hit on apply, hit on OK, hit on OK in there, hit on apply and hit on OK in there. So now you can see with our surface pattern in there, we have our pattern of a brick shape going inside there, and we have on the background an ash color on the surface pattern in there. So we can decide to take off the ash color over there. We can decide to take that off. Now one thing you're going to realize is that when you change the scale, all right, when you change the scale to any scale you want, it doesn't affect the pattern in there. So when I change to 1000 in there, let me just bring it down all the way to 20, you notice it doesn't affect the pattern. All right, it doesn't affect the pattern in there. All right, it doesn't affect that pattern. So I'm going to bring it back to 100 in there, and you notice my pattern is still the same as it is. So I'm going to click on that wall, head back into the edit type, and also get back into my material browser, and we are going to deal with the cut pattern. So with the cut pattern, it's just going to be patterns you are going to see on plan. All right, they are only going to be patterns you are going to see on plan and also in your sections. All right, if you have any view that is being cut, you are going to be able to see all these patterns you are going to input in here. All right, so that's what the name implies in there, a cut pattern. So if you have anything or any material or any substance or any object that is being cut in there, and you have specified a cut pattern in there, that is the same cut pattern you are going to see in there. So with this wall, I'm going to put a cut pattern in there. I'm going to use this diagonal 1.5 mm in there, and I'm not going to put a background in there. So I'm not going to put a background. I'm going to make sure this is as black as it can get in there. So hit on apply, hit on OK, hit on OK in there, hit on apply, hit on OK. So you are not going to see it in here because the wall has not been cut. So let me get into level 1 in there, and let me change this to fine, and you can see we have our cut pattern in there. You can see now our wall has this cut pattern in there. Now the only way some of you guys are not going to see it is if you don't change the detail level in here. So you have to make sure you change this detail level in here, and most of you guys are going to have by default yours on course. All right, so that is why you're not going to see that cut pattern in there. So some of you guys might have to change that to the fine, and you're going to have all those details of the cut pattern in there as well. So I'm going to click on my wall back and head back into edit type and get back into structure, edit, and get back into my wall. Now I'm going to be explaining how you can actually create or model out your own pattern in there. So when you get back into the brick section in there, and we have the model aspect. All right, so with this icon you see in here is to edit the fill pattern. So I'm going to click on that, where it's going to give you a basic step on how you can edit that pattern in there. So you can decide to change it to basic, and where you can make changes to that pattern in there. So you can keep it at 45, and you can keep the line spacing at 5, whatever you prefer. All right, so you can keep it at 50. This is fine. So it's just to basically show whatever you prefer in there. And now we can create a new fill pattern in there. So we can click on this, and we can head straight into custom. When you head straight into custom in there, you can get into the browse tab. When you head into the browse tab, you would have to find, so Revit, with Revit and AutoCAD, they have the same kind of fill patterns you can use. All right, they are called .pat files. So you can get in those .pat files and use those files for your patterns in there. So I have a pat file on my device in there. So I'm going to head back into my desktop, and I'm going to find my Graphiato, and this is that pat file I was talking about. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to load it inside there. Now yes, so it's going to tell you no model type pattern found. That is because we are doing that in the model aspect. All right, so when I head back into the drafting aspect, when I head into the drafting side, and then I click on this tab right there, this icon in there, and then I get into custom, and then I browse, and then bring back that pattern in there. It loads up in there now. So we have our pattern in there. You are not seeing that visible in this view here yet because of our scale. So we'll have to check our scale in there, which is the import scale. So you can change that to 0.005, and let me keep that at 0.9 in there. So we have this in there. We can click on OK, and now we can actually apply this kind of stone finish pattern in there as well. So you can change that and have that stone pattern in there. I'm going to keep this at black in there, and then I can hit on apply, hit on OK, and hit on OK in there, hit on apply, hit on OK, and head into the 3D view, and you can see we have our pattern in there, our stone floor patterns on the surface of the wall in there. So when I head into any of the elevation views, you can see we have those surface pattern also in there as well. Now I wanted to show you something on the cut pattern. All right, so I'm going to cut a section through our wall in there. I'm going to cut a simple section, click in there, and you can see we would have to change this to fine, and you can see we have our line in there, we have our cut pattern line in there. With this, when you change the scale, it also changes the number of cut patterns we have in there. So that's one thing you need to have in mind as well. So I'm going to get back into 1 in 100, which is the default scale, and get in here and then delete my section line. I don't need that. And I'm going to get back into my material browser. So click on edit type, in there and get back into edit and also click on that three dots right there. All right, so I'm going to filter this out into masonry. All right, so we spoke about the surface patterns in there, and we have the background as well. We spoke about the cut pattern, where if you are those patterns are only going to be visible on plan, because the plan is obviously being cut, and also sections as well. So that's the parts you are going to see the cut patterns in there. And we spoke about our use render appearance in there as well. Now I'm going to run quickly into my appearance asset. All right, I'm going to run quickly into my appearance asset. Now when I head into my appearance asset, let me just enlarge this for you guys to see what we have in there. So when I head into my appearance asset, like I said, this palm you see right there shows the number, which you see right there, 0, which means that there's no material inside of the software using the same appearance asset in there. So it's on 0 in there. All right, so now when you see this icon, this image right there, all right, so when you see this icon right there, we are going to click on this icon. You're going to have some 3 different types of parameters in there. So we have the scene, where you can change that. So we have a wall. When I change this to curtain wall, you're going to see in there we have the curtain glazing rather showing the brick in there. So we can change that to anything we want. So we can put that on plane, where it's going to like show an overview of how the surface of our asset material in there is going to look. So you can use that as well if maybe you are designing a floor slab in there. So you can also check the cube and also see how it's going to look like on the cube in there. And we can also go for fabric as well, a fabric in there, and you can see this is how it's going to look like also in there. And we can change that as well. Now Revit, the default one that Revit is always going to give you is this object one in there, where you're going to see this also in there as well. All right, so I'm going to show you guys a little bit of some stuff in there. And when you head into the environment, it's basically the lighting on how you're going to see that on different lighting scenes. So in a snow field, this is how we are going to see that material. This is how it's looking like when we are in the part of the world where it's snowing. I'm currently in Ghana, Africa, so I'm definitely not going to touch that, by the way. So I'm going to keep that at great light, and I'm going to change this to the wall, where we have the chair, which is just basically for scaling. All right, so I'm going to get back into render settings. Now most of you guys are going to have by default your render settings on draft quality. You can keep that at production quality, which is obviously going to change that. Revit is now going to render that and keep this asset view on a better quality. All right, it's going to keep it on a better quality scene in there. So you can see it's kind of like rendering that, it's updating. It's going to give me a better image view of how my brick asset is going to look like in there. All right, so some of you are going to you can put that on your production quality, or you can keep it at draft quality. It depends. Some of you don't have from the part of the country where I come from, some of us don't have very strong computers to be able to keep that on the production quality. So we usually keep that on draft quality, but I'm going to leave mine on the production quality because I have a very powerful laptop in there. I use a very powerful system. So now we have the information tab in there, which is non-running, the description in there, which is masonry, and we have some keywords also in there for this assets you see in there. And when you head into the masonry, all right, so it's just the masonry type. We can change that to a CMU in the concrete masonry unit. So now we have an image in here, which is the exact image you see in here. So you can decide to download an image. All right, so you can decide to go online and then you download an image which you are going to use to actually use for your appearance asset. So if you maybe come across a brick image or a stone image, you'd want it to be visible in there, you can actually load that into this aspect in here. So when you click on this drop down menu in there, we have the checkers. You can change that, and this is what it's going to look like in there. And we have the appearance color, where you can change all that in there as well. And this is going to come in handy, but in my entire life using Revit, I don't think I've ever come across any of this. I've ever come in here to use any of this stuff in there. So I'm going to leave this on image. And so when you click on that image right there, when you just click right below the image right there, you are going to see you're having this pop-up menu, which is the text editor. All right, so we have the source, which is this image right there. So you can click in there, you can click in there as well, and then you can find an image you want. So Revit is going to give you a couple of images in there, which is quite useful, so you can use that in your design. So we can change this and make it thumbnails so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So we have these images in there. Let me just kind of zoom in a little bit. So you can decide to use this terrazzo surface in there, and we have this image, and we have a couple bit of bricks in there as well, and we have this wood finish in there as well, and a rustic wood and a brick. So we have all these images in there, so you can decide to load any image you want inside of your software in there. So I'm going to keep my image in there just as it is. I like that image in there. You can decide to increase the brightness in there as well. You can decide to increase it to whatever you want, whatever desire you want, and then you can decide to fix in the position in there, and then you can lock it in by just clicking that to constrain your dimensions in there. So I can click on done right there, and with the relief pattern, it's just an image which is going to show a relief pattern of our design, our asset library. So it doesn't really, so your image in there is not really going to look flat. It's going to look like, going to have some sort of like some relief pattern also in there as well. So this is image is what is doing that. So we can click on that, and Revit has also some sort of images in there we can use for our relief patterns. It has a lot of images in there, so you can decide to use any of them for your relief patterns. That is if you have a relief pattern in any of these images, or you can go online, download it, and place it on your desktop, and you can come in here and then you load it inside of your software, and you can use that relief pattern also in there as well. All right, so I'm going to click on done in there, and we can just see our theme in there, which is just to make this appearance asset a little bit darker. So if you want to make this dark, you can just click on that, and then it's going to get that to make it very dark in there as well. So let me just click on this image in here. All right, so we have our offset. Now, one thing you need to pay attention now when you're scrolling in there, all right, is very dangerous in there. So when you're scrolling, all right, so you notice when I was scrolling, every figure, all the figures in here were 0. So when I was scrolling, it's kind of like rather increasing the numbers in there, while maybe I just wanted to scroll down. So you need to be careful so you don't mess around with all those figures in there as well. Make sure you don't mess around with all those figures. So everything in there was 0. I'm going to keep it at 0. So make sure you move your mouse pointer to a safer side, and then you kind of like scroll in there. So you can increase the scale of the sample size in there. So I'm going to change this to 5. All right, and click on that, and click on that. Now you can see our break here has increased. All right, now with our relief pattern, it's not going to be the same. All right, so you need to make sure you apply the same setting for it as well. Make sure you make sure you apply the same scale size, the sample size, and also keep it at 5 in there, and it's going to match with exactly what we have in there. So you need to make sure you perform the same 2 types, the scaling in there, whatever figure you give in here for the scaling. Make sure you also put the same figure in the relief pattern as well, which is very, very useful in there. So we have this also in there, and we are heading back into our graphics tab. So I've explained the surface pattern in there, and also explained the cut pattern. We've talked about our identity side as well, and we have the appearance asset. We just finished talking about all this appearance asset, and with the physical asset, it's not really anything in there. It just have to place in the name, the description, and with the density in there for our brick wall in there. Now, one thing you need to have at the back of your mind is not every material in there are going to have the same parameters you see in here. All right, not every material is going to give you the same parameters, where you're going to have a relief pattern, a tint, and a masonry. All right, not every material. Let me go and show you guys. So when I select a wood, you notice it's changing in there. We don't have the same in there, but although we have a relief pattern, let me look for another material in there. Let me say a default roof. You notice we've changed in there. Okay, we don't have, we've added new parameters in there. New parameters has been added inside there, so you can see not every material is going to give you the same parameters. All right, it's going to be different in the other assets as well. So in the appearance assets, you're not going to have the same parameters. All right, so you go back in here, you notice we don't have a relief pattern in there for this asset, this material assets, because it's just a mass skylight. All right, so we are not going to have a relief pattern in there. When I get into concrete, you notice we have a finish bump in there, we have weathering. So there are different parameters for different kinds of materials. All right, so it's going to be different in some other materials also in there. Now with this concrete cast in situ, you can see in there our palm is showing 2 in there, which means that we have 2 other materials using the same asset appearance inside our software. All right, so you guys need to pay attention to that as well. So I'm going to pause here, I'm going to end the video here, and we'll continue in our final part, where we are going to create our own material in our final part, which is the part 3 of our material library series. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't liked or subscribed to my channel, you might never see me again. So make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video. You can drop a comment in the comment section if you want to add anything to what we have discussed in this video. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm still working real hard on a Saturday. My future I don't see from a mile away.